So this is what we have considered, right? And uh, so this is the purpose, right? Or what we have considered, how to study the history and what you will be always looking into it, right? Ultimately, what you have to do, you have to altogether see the development, right? So and that development throughout the all the aspects, right? Not only societal or the political or societal development, right? So it is the case. Later on it comes, so this is what about the Vedic culture. So later on, the period which you can consider, which was also of the same period, but it is a little bit different, and therefore it is called latter Vedic period. Latter Vedic period. So which was from 1000 BC to 600 BC. 1000 BC to 600 BC. So how some of these things have been changed, right, as compared to the early Vedic period or simply a Vedic period as compared to the latter Vedic period. Fine. So in this particular case, if you consider the first point, obviously we will be considering it about geographical area. Geographical area, right? So latter Vedic culture, or sorry, latter Vedic period. So how the geographical area changed? So earlier the Aryans were settled in the Sindh, right? That is Sapta Sindhu. But now during the latter Vedic period, the Aryans have settled, right, virtually the whole of the northern India, right? So between the Dow of Ganga and Yamuna, if you consider that particular, so on the bank of Ganga, now they have settled, right? And therefore the center of culture now shifted from Saraswati to Ganga. Right? The center of, because of this new settlement in the North India, the center of culture shifted from Saraswati to Ganga, right? So these are the things. Now earlier there were the mentioning of Ganga was there, right? Or other 7 rivers were there. But in this time period, right, you will be finding out 3 different names, right? So there was mention of more rivers. So that more rivers are Narmada, Sadnira, and Chambal. Right. So these 3 new names in that particular you can add, right? So this would be the case. Now the expansion of the people towards the east is indicated in a legend of Satpatha Brahmana. So Satpatha Brahmana is telling you about the expansion of the people towards east. Right. So it is explaining how the people have migrated from the Sapta Sindhu, right, to the Ganges. Fine. So here you can consider all these things. So how people have uh, migrated from Saraswati region to Sadnira region, and then how they came to the land of Videha, right? So that would be the case you will be always considering. Fine. So it is a kind of Satpatha Brahmana, right? Will be telling you about the expansion of the people towards east. Excuse me. Excuse me. So that is the case you can consider about the expansion of the people from Saraswati to Ganga. Now, in this period, what had happened geographically, if you consider, so there was emergence of Janpadas. So Janpadas have emerged. So mainly, you can consider the Kuru Janpada, Panchala Janpada, and Kashi Janpada. Right. So Kuru was nothing but the combination of Purus and Bharatas. Panchala was the combination of Turvashas and Krivish. And Kashi is in the doab of the Ganga and Narmada region. So these were the Janpadas you can consider which have been emerged. Again, as far as the literature mentioning the names, right? So in later Vedic literatures mentioning the name of the mountain called Vindhya, southern mountain, right? Vindhya mountain. So geographically, Vindhya mountain has like new rivers, Narmada, Chambal, and Sadnira. The new mountain, right? Apart from Hindu Kush, Himalaya, right? In the early Vedic literature. So here the latter Vedic literature mentions the Vindhya mountain. Fine. Then the reference to the territorial divisions, the latter Vedas gives three broad divisions of India as Aryavarta, which is called northern India, Madhya Desha, called central India, and Dakkinapat, called southern India. Right. So terrestrial divisions of the India, right, as Aryavarta, Madhya Desh, and Dakkinapat. Right. So this is what geographically you can consider. Right. So now Aryans settled whole of northern India. Northern India. Fine. Now, and because of this, you can consider center of culture. Center of culture shifted from Saraswati to Ganga. To, you can consider Ganges. Fine. Then, so more rivers mentioned. More rivers mentioned as Narmada, Chambal, 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 and Gandak. Right, modern name is Gandak. So here the expansion of people, how people have expanded towards east, right? So is indicated in Satpatha, Brahmana, right? Right. So as Vedas are mentioning different rivers or the mountains, likewise now Satpatha Brahmana is mentioning the expansion of people towards the east. Right. Then during this period, the emergence of Janapadas. Right. So Janapadas were emerged. So first one, Kuru, which was the combination of Purus and Bharatas. Second one is Panchala, right, which was combination of the Turvashas, and Krivis. And last one is the Kashi, which is a Doab region. Right. So the region between Ganga and Yamuna you can consider as Doab. Fine. If anybody wants, you can. Okay, fine. So Doab region. Then the later Vedic literature, mentions Vindhya mountain. Vindhya mountain. Right. What is Vindhya mountain? It is nothing but the southern mountain. Fine. So there were 3 territorial divisions. Right. So territorial divisions. Right. So first territorial division you can consider is Aryavarta. Aryavarta. Right. So what is Aryavarta? It is nothing but the northern India. Northern India. Second one you can consider is the Madhya Desha. Madhya Desha, right, which is nothing but the central India. And the third one you can consider is Dakhinapat. Dakhinapat, which is nothing but southern India. Southern India. Right. So this is what you can consider about the geographical area. Now, what must have been changed politically? Right. So second point you can consider here is polity. Right. So polity. Large kingdoms and stately cities have been made their appearance in the later Vedic period. Right. So in later Vedic period, large kingdoms as well as the cities, stately cities, have appeared. Right. So here you can consider the theory of divine origin of kingship. Right. So theory of kingship have been originated. Right. So there was a Brahmana, right? Taittiriya Brahmana. Taittiriya Brahmana. According to Taittiriya Brahmana, the theory of origin of kingship was there, and therefore the governmental machinery became more elaborate than the before, and as a sequel of the growth of powers of the king. Right. So once you have considered now origin of the king, so with the origin of the king, the governmental machinery have become more elaborate. Right. Also, new civil functionalities or the functionaries, right? Besides only the civil functionary, which was in Rigvedic period, right? That was came as the Purohita came into exist. Right. So there was now there were now Bhagduda called collector of the taxes, then the Suta called royal herald or charioteer, then uh, Khastri, which is called chamberlain, and Akshavapa, which is called courier. So in Vedic period, we have considered there was only one Purohita, right? And later on, Gramani and Senani, right? So how in this period these things get changed, or is there apart from Purohita anything exist? So yes, there was existence to collect the taxes, that is tax collector, right, or collector of the taxes, then the royal charioteer, right? So that will be then courier. So these were the things which had been in the existence. Further, the military officials at the time of Rigvedic period were Senani, right, the general, and the Gramani. So same were continued even in the latter Vedic culture or latter Vedic period, right? So this is the case you can always consider. Now, uh, in this period, the beginning of regular system of provincial government had been there, right? So during the latter Vedic period, the beginning of regular system of provincial government was saw, right? So it saw that there was a beginning of the regular system of provincial government. As you know, janpadas were forms, obviously the regular system of provincial government must be there, right? So that is the case you can always consider. Fine. Now, so in this case we find sthapati, which is being entrusted with the duty of administering and outlying the areas occupied by the aboriginals, and so Satpati being put over a group of 100 villages. Adhikrata was the village officials. Ugras, as mentioned in the Upanishada, were probably the police officials. Right? So these are the some of the things you can always consider. So if you are going to consider the regular system of provincial government, then you must be always cutting down or having the different stages, right, of that particular governance. So here Ugras called the police officials, Adhikritas called the village officials, sorry, Adhikritas called village officials, and Satpati called the group of 100 villages, and Sthapati, which was rather he was administering the uh, complete area. Fine. So this is the case you will be always considering. Now, the popular control over the affairs of the kingdoms was exercised through Sabha and Samiti, as we have considered in Vedic culture also, right? So in Rigvedic culture, we have considered Sabha and Samiti have great importance, right? Likewise here also, the control over the affairs of the kingdom were looked up by or exercised by the Sabha and Samiti. That is the case you can consider. During latter Vedic period, right, so kings did not possess a standing army, right? So in this period, the judiciary had grown up. The king played a great role in administering the criminal law, right? So the killing of the embryo homicide or a murder of a brahmana, in particular stealing of the gold, right, drinking sura, these were considered as the serious crimes, right? So we have considered in early Vedic culture or early Vedic period the alcoholic consumption in the form of sura and sam, right? So these were considered as in this period as the serious crimes, right? So that is the case you will be always considering, right? So this is a thing which you can always consider in the polity, right? So what is the first point you can consider? Right, large kingdoms and stately cities. Right. So large kingdoms and stately cities, right, appeared in this particular period. Fine. So the origin, right, theory of the divine origin of of kingship, right, and therefore so therefore government machinery, right, so because of the origin of the kingship, the government machinery have become more elaborate, become more elaborate, right? So and therefore subsequent to this one, new civil functionaries, right, apart from purohita, right? There was only one purohita, right? Earlier only one civil functionary, purohita, right? So new civil functionaries apart from purohita came into existence, came into existence, right? So what was that, right, apart from purohita? Bhagduda, Bhagduda. So what was Bhagduda? Was the collector of taxes. So tax collection, Suta or Sarthi. Sorry, Sarthi. Right. Royal Herald of Charitor. Royal Herald of, or sorry, Royal Herald or simply Charitor. Charioteer. आपण अगोदर बघितलं होतं फक्त सैन्याचाच पार्ट होता. Right. Now it had become royal. Right. Then Ashwapada. Sorry, Akshopada. A K S H A Aksha Pada. Right. Sorry, Akshova. Sorry, not DA. Akshopa. Akshopa. So what is this one? This is the courier. Right. This is the courier. And fine. So this is the case you can consider. Now, at the time of, right, so military officials, right, military officials called Senani, right, as well as Gramani, right. So Senani, the general or the head of the army, and Gramani, the head of the village, right. So continued to function. They had been in the Vedic period, and in later Vedic period also they continued, right. So this one. Then in this period there was beginning of provincial government, right? Provincial government. So again here we have different we will call, right? So first one, Sthapati, right? So what is Sthapati? It is nothing but which was entrusted with the duty of administering, right? So entrusted with duty of administering. Then second position you can consider the Satpati. So Satpati was always being put over a group of 100 villages, right? So Satpati put over a group of 100 villages. Then next you can consider Adhikrita, which is village officials. Adhikrita, village officials. So this was the group of villages official. right? And latter one you can consider is Ugras, right? Ugras, a police official. So this is what the regular system of the government, right, which was administering, or the provincial government. So you have these different elements of that uh, regular system of the provincial government. Fine. So this is the case you will be always consider. So the control over the affairs of the kingdom was through, right, further control over the affairs of the kingdom, right? So control over the affairs of the kingdom exercised through Sabha and Samiti. Sabha and Samiti, which was also there in the Rigvedic or the Vedical period. See, it is also called Rigvedic period, it is also called early Vedic period, right? Or it is also called as the Vedic culture. You should not get confused with three different names, right? So this is what you can consider. Then during latter Vedic time, right, the kings did not possess standing army, right? So kings did not possess standing army, right? In fact, it was actually first came into existence when Dhananan or Magad, right, particularly Nanda dynasty have started, right? So kings did not possess standing army. So in this period, judiciary grew up, right? Judiciary grew up, and in this case, king played a great role. King played a great role in administering the criminal law. Ministering criminal law. If anybody wants, you can. Done? Okay. So the murder of Brahmana, then stealing of gold, drinking sura, drinking Sura. So these were regarded as serious crimes. Serious crimes. Right. So these were the, this is what you can consider about the polity of later Vedic period. Right. Now society. Okay. So next one you can consider is the society. Now see what happened. So as the Aryans have expanded from east, right, towards the east side, towards the south side, right. So a group of people known as Kshatriyas emerged to conquer the territories and administer them. Another group formed a separate class known as Vaishyas, right? And obviously the remaining, right? So Brahmanas we have considered, right? And the non formed fourth class known as Shudras, right? So this is the case you can always consider as far as the society of the latter Vedic culture is concerned. I think we are at the end of this particular session. So probably we may not complete it. So in next session, we will go to the society.